Hello everybody. Welcome to the On Second Thought Sports Show on the Mental Conditioning Podcast. We're coming to you live with so much going on with sports. We're going to do a show and a half this week. So we're going to do a little small segment. Since everybody's talking about it, we wanted to kind of get into it. I thought it would be a good quick topic to kind of get into a little bit and just kind of get a different perspective. I think, and it should be actually an interesting conversation because obviously we are a father and son team here, so it'll be interesting to hear the different perspectives of how we see this situation going down with Dion Sanders and his son. It's just going to be very interesting to see what these guys think. Aaron and I had a little bit of a conversation about it the other day. Isaiah and I didn't really talk about it too much, so let me just introduce myself real quick. I'm Elliot.
Man.
Isaiah.
Cool.
Man.
So we're going to get into it. Obviously, everybody's talking about it, and we know the situation. Dion Sanders actually has two sons that was in the draft this year.
Yeah.
And one of them just went, early, no problems. His second son.
He did?
No. He didn't go yet, did he?
Shadeur went undrafted.
Shadeur went undrafted,
but
but he signed to the Bucks.
But he did sign.
Yeah.
Got it. So, second son, it seemed as though, he's a quarterback. And, everybody thought that, he was certainly going to be drafted, and certainly in the first round. I know the NFL draft is a little bit different, I think, from the NBA draft, in that it definitely goes round after round after round. It goes on for multiple days. And in NFL, sometimes, guys get drafted 6th round, and they, I think Tom Brady, obviously, arguably the greatest football player of all time, certainly arguably the greatest quarterback of all time, was drafted in the 6th round. And you hear so many stories about that in football, so it's a little bit different. Basketball, especially in this day and age, let's be honest, after about the 5th or 6th pick, we all go to sleep anyway. But football is a little bit different. But, guys get anticipated to go at a certain point, and Dion Sanders' son did not. So there's been some controversy about that. He's upset about it. His dad is upset about it. Let's talk about that real quick and see, what do you guys take on it? How do you see that from what you know about it? We're not big college football people. I watch the NFL, so I'm familiar with that. But what is your guys' take on that? Just kind of from what you see from afar, even from the standpoint of, a father and son situation.
Well, as probably the only person here that doesn't watch football at all, what I've heard, I've asked, around at league, I've asked around, people I know. From what I can understand, everything is pretty much based on his dad. His dad wants some sort of. His dad's a coach, right? If I'm not mistaken, his dad's a coach, so I think his dad wants some sort of participation or something like that with whatever team he got drafted to. And then I've seen some clips of him talking crazy about the NFL and things like that. And it is what it is. I know you want to be associated with your son and what he does, but nah, you got to leave that alone. That's a grown man now trying to do his job, that's going to be his job for the next however long he plays. 16, 20 years. How long do NFL players usually play?
No.
I don't know.
No. They 7, 8 years. Guys, it's an average player may not even last that long if you're good. It's rare you get a guy play, 16 years in the NFL. So
well, either way, the dad's really bringing down the kids. I know the youngest or the oldest, Shiloh's the oldest or the youngest, whatever. Shiloh.
I think he's I don't know.
I know he recently got a manager.
I saw that.
He recently had to get one because he's like, yo, you're screwing me here.
I saw that. So
he had to get a manager, and I think that's just kind of what they have to do. I know it sucks, but no offense, but they got to just leave dad behind because you messing up my entire career before it even gets started, bro. I'm a 5th, 6th rounder. The other one didn't even get drafted. Like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I saw that too. That Shiloh. He, I guess. Oh, Aaron, go ahead. I guess Dion Sanders was both of his sons, Shiloh and Shen. How you pronounce it? Shedeur. He was both of their agents.
Right.
And I'm guessing that Shiloh was like, yeah, this looks like this is going to be a problem. There's so many different information. This is what I'm hearing. That he said, this is going to be a problem. So I went with getting a different agent. That's big. I think that's a big factor in all of this. And that, to me, is kind of recognizing, like, my father's a very polarizing figure in football, and he's certainly one of the more famous athletes, and quite frankly, of my all time, of my years of living and watching sports, Deion Sanders is one of those guys that he's an all-time popular athlete. And he was one of those guys that's, very, very, very flamboyant in terms of who he was and really in your face. And I don't hold that against him as a player. You know what I mean? That was the thing, Dion, and that was the thing that was big for him. That was his aura. And that was big for him. But, I just feel like it's a tough situation for him being a dad and then to kind of bring that on his sons. I did see there's a clip, we don't know when that clip came out, but there's a clip where he's saying, you know what, I know what's best for my sons, and I'm going to push my sons away from certain teams. To me, that's a problem because, like I said, the league is definitely going to look at that like, oh, really? I mean, it's an ego thing. I'm not saying that the league is right for that. The league is probably wrong, but at the same time, you know what, these people are owners, and they're going to look at it like, oh, yeah, you're not in the league anymore, to where we have to run behind you and kiss your butt. And so, to me, it's a very interesting thing that you have to be careful how you look at this and how it's affecting the kids. I feel like for me, I take a hard stance on this, and that I feel like, Deion Sanders has had his time, and sometimes the best thing to do is to kind of sit back. I'm not saying that if you see a train wreck coming, you're going to let your sons get hit by the train, but at the same time, you do have to, and I'm sure he's done a great job. I'm sure he's a great dad, and he, managed his sons to be very, very smart. But you have to be careful, I think, sometimes in just, making that aura comes to them. That's not a matter of him, not questioning his parenting, but I just have to be careful with, people bringing that stuff, for him and trying to put it down on your boys. So, Aaron?
I feel like Shedeur, from what I seen, he wasn't as much disappointed as he was shocked. He wasn't. Well, obviously, he might have felt disappointed, but he didn't. To me, from what I seen, he didn't show it. He kind of just showed that he was kind of shocked that he felt that low.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But and I also heard that someone, I forget which team. I don't know if they disclosed the team, but one of the teams said one of his interviews was one of the worst interviews he's ever had to do.
Yes.
And a lot of people are speculating that it's kind of like his confidence level. Like some people think it's kind of like an ego thing for him, but I don't think Shedeur has an ego. From what I see from him off the field, he's a confident kid, but he doesn't have an ego. And I feel like sometimes people can mistake the two, and they kind of take it personal, oh, you coming up here thinking you're the best, you're gonna be the best in the league, they don't really want to associate with you. I feel like that's another problem. Kind of just the offices as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's a great point. I think that's a great point, Aaron. And that's where I would say that, the pedigree, and it's not, it is what it is. Like I said, Deion Sanders is definitely, like I said, one of the greatest athletes that we've seen. And again, his aura of, him being who he is what made him as spectacular and as special as he is. It's just that I feel like you have to be careful here because, like Aaron just illustrated that point, I think it's a great point. You're saying that, I've heard the kid speak too, and it doesn't feel like that to me necessarily. I don't have a problem with a kid, saying that they're confident, or anybody saying that they're confident. But like you said, it's coming off, I guess, to the general managers that he's being cocky. And like you said, I don't necessarily sense that, but obviously that's coming from, his father's this way. We don't know what, Dad is doing behind the scenes, if he's actually calling up this team. That's been going around, that he's calling up teams and saying whatever he's saying, that this has to be done, I just think it's a very tricky situation. If you compare the situations now, I was thinking about this earlier today, some people may be saying, well, look, LeBron James did it, and,
did what?
In terms of being involved, heavily involved in Bronny, into the league, and obviously, I'm sure that has some influence on, where Bronny is, and like Dion said, you can't blame him. I understand this point. Like, look, I know this league. I know the NFL, and I know the pitfalls for it, and I don't want to see him go through that. I understand that line of thinking, right? So he can definitely make those phone calls like, nah, I ain't trying to mess with said team. But do you think that a LeBron James and Deion Sanders have the same impact at this particular time?
No.
Right.
The biggest difference between those two is that if Bronny were to have been drafted by another team, I wouldn't say LeBron would have been, had a whole temper tantrum, going on Ellen DeGeneres, and was like, I don't know, that's not a good fit for Bronny. He would let Bronny be Bronny. Because he's always said that, Bronny doesn't have to play basketball. Bronny don't need money. But Bronny wants to play. And LeBron, when he does these interviews on him, he respects that enough to where he I would say that he did obviously kind of low-key get Bronny into the league.
Right.
But he's going to let Bronny be his own player.
Right.
Dion is not really that. Dion's like, listen to me, son. The Cleveland Browns drafted you. You are not playing for the Browns. You are going to get a trade immediately.
Right.
That's not right. Dion is a grown man. Shedeur is a grown man. Like, you got to step up for yourself at some point.
Well, look, it's tough, man, because, and I want to be fair, I know a lot of this, a lot of talk goes back and forth, like, well, this has been done before. It's nothing new. I would agree with that. I know the same thing happened for the Mannings. Archie wanted his boys to go to certain teams, and he did that as well. The problem here is, there's a couple of factors, but I think one of the factors is the fact that, again, Deion Sanders is Deion Sanders, and he has that aura already about him. So I do think, for whatever the reason, the league does want to stick it to him. I believe that, to where, if he was a liked guy, this wouldn't really be an issue. We're like, oh, Deion's cool. But let's be honest, for whatever the reasons, the league does want to stick it to him. And so, to me, you have to be kind of conscious of that. Aaron and I got into this debate the other day where I was saying that, for me, I just feel like, these guys, and just to compare it to LeBron James, it's a little bit different because LeBron James is still playing. I think that's the main difference. LeBron James can still call up any general manager because he's still LeBron James and I'm still in the league. And they don't, especially at that point when Bronny came into the league, people didn't know where LeBron was going to play. Right. So everybody was kind of like, we might have a chance to get LeBron James. Whatever he tells us to do with Bronny, we'll do it. There's no incentive here for Deion Sanders. It's just some dude calling that we don't like in the beginning. And so to me, I noticed, and this is tricky, even during the draft, to me, you see Deion Sanders sitting in this setting just like we're sitting, and he's the guy on the camera. To me, I just feel like, what, man, I feel like if it was me, I would be like, I think I just kind of want to just sit to the back. I'm not saying that I wouldn't make these phone calls. Anybody who sit there saying that they're not going to make phone calls as a dad is lying. But I just feel like if I was somebody that was already like a prominent person there, I'm going to probably try to sit back and not do that. And it's not about, judging anybody's parenting skills. I just think that it's just hard only because the guy's kind of behind the eight ball. It's not his fault. For whatever the reason, he's not liked. And so he's kind of behind the eight ball that you have to kind of play it for what you see. And if you play it for what you see, you got to try to be careful. Because I definitely think the boy should have been, I think everybody would agree he shouldn't have gone 144th. This does happen, though. That's what it was, 144, I think. Yeah, I think it was 144. This does happen in football that guys do drop down, badly. This happens. Like I said, I don't know where Tom Brady was supposed to go, but, guys do drop down. It does happen. But I believe that some of it was probably because of just his last name being, Sanders, which is, unfortunate for him. But I just, wanted to cover that a little bit to kind of talk about. I think that's really, to me, to tell you the truth, a real mindset type of situation. And ultimately, here's the good news, I think, for both of his sons, is that they are going to be in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And so, to me, at the end of the day, you know what? Like Aaron kind of said, like he was disappointed. But guess what? To me, no harm, no foul. What's the difference? If I got drafted number one and you burn out or you garbage, nobody really cares by the time the fifth game of the season comes. If you're a starter, you get lucky, or you're gonna put you right up there in the forefront. You're a starter, and by the 10th game, you'd have been intercepted. You lead the lead in interception. It's a complete disaster. It's just clear you have nothing. Nobody cares. And for the other end of that, he got drafted, whatever it is, 144th, and he ends up by the third or fourth game, he gets lucky, somebody gets hurt. Well, not wish nobody get hurt. He gets his opportunity, and he's just an absolute superstar. nobody cares when you got drafted at that point. And so that's why I think, you have to kind of let it go. And for him, I would, just suggest, and I'm sure his dad is telling him that, use this as motivation.
You sure?
And go out there and just, prove that everybody made a mistake, and, the things that they were saying is tragic. But I will end it by also saying one last.
Well, I got a question.
Oh, go ahead.
My question is, depending on, doesn't matter, whatever is right, whether it's because Dion said this, or Dion said that, or, whatever it is, why in the world does that matter so much? Because you can't tell me 100 players better than Shedeur. And if I'm a head coach, I'm a GM, or whoever's in charge of the draft, I'm thinking, this kid is a really good player, and I'm trying to win. If Dion comes to me talking about something, I'm saying, Dion, you're not playing anymore, man. Your son is playing. Your son is under contract, not you.
I'm glad you said that.
Is it just me?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that.
It is just me?
No, I'm not going to say it's just you, but I'm glad you said that, because I thought about this today. And to bring up this comparison about, and again, it's tough because I don't know Shedeur to say if this is true or not.
Right.
But what's coming out is basically, let's be honest, to put a label on it, which I don't like to use labels, but to just kind of package it. They're trying to insinuate, Aaron mentioned that one of the general managers said that his interview was terrible. They're trying to insinuate non-professionalism. Will everybody agree?
Right.
That's what they're trying to insinuate. So, that being the case, I cross over sports now. I cross over to a different genre, and I go to basketball. I'm looking over here because the playoffs is on now. And I go back to the heated debate about Luka Doncic. The same situation in terms of, again, here's a guy that was unprofessional. The team felt like this dude is unprofessional. He got to get out of here. We're not going to deal with that. So to me, I was kind of seeing a parallel there for myself to say, well, maybe that's kind of what's the tone that's being taken. To the extremes that these teams are going, I don't know. Again, the Dallas Mavericks may, regret the day that they did this, because the talent may be so overwhelming at some point that they're like, oh my God. But at the same time, would they have been, and I don't want to go into that necessarily, but would they have gotten him under control if they didn't make the move that they made? Maybe that's how people feel about, in the Sanders situation. If we let this kid play here, we feel like we can't get him under control. Which, listen, that's probably unfair because he's a rookie. He's a young kid. And to assume that, he's going to be out of control with his attitude is probably, it's unfair. And a lot of people, again, that's why I would encourage him to make sure that he works hard. I'm sure he will. And he's going to prove a lot of people wrong. So, it's just an interesting thing. It'll be interesting to see ultimately this ending of this story is in the hands of both the Sanders boys, and just to go in there and to dominate. I'm curious to see what's the fallout for Shiloh, essentially firing his dad, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, if he fired him or whatever the case may be. Or just, maybe they came to a mutual agreement and said, it's better for me to kind of break away, which I just think that's because of his dad and just the way that he is. And this is my last point. As a father, I wouldn't want to put these two guys in that position. You know what I mean? So if I knew that the league looked at me like that, or whatever situation looked at me like that, I wouldn't even want to put them in that position to have to come to me and be like, yo, I don't think this. I would go to them and be like, listen, guys, I got you guys here. We put you guys through college. You belong in the professional ranks. Do your thing. They don't like me. I'm not gonna let's call it is. Y'all go ahead and do your thing. So that's just how I feel like I would handle it. But everybody's different. I'm sure Deion Sanders knows the ins and outs even more so than any one of us in terms of what he's fighting for. In terms of he doesn't want his kids to go through that. So I totally respect that. And you know what? We all have to kind of respect that he's making the right decisions in terms of stepping in and saying no good. I want to make sure that my guys don't have to go through, I'm sure, a lot of the nonsense that he went through. But it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Anybody got anything else to finish up on that one? So we'll watch it. We'll watch it. But this is one of those things that for me, this is not about sports. More so, it's a combination. Obviously, sports is there. But it's really a mindset type of conversation that you have here. And really being able to see the big picture. What's truly the big picture here for everybody involved. and that includes the teams, that includes, the father, that includes the sons. This is really a mindset. What's everybody's big picture here in this particular case? And if you break it down, kind of looks like we need to have the work in that area, that everybody got to really hone in on how important the big picture is. If you're talking about the teams, they're just as culpable as anybody else, because if you have a player that can, add to you getting towards winning a championship, why the hell are you not, drafting him and putting him on the team? And obviously, if dad feels that the ultimate goal is to get them to the league and for them to, do as well as they can, you got to try to figure that out in the Suns as well. But let's see how it plays out. Let's see. We're going to have a lot of thoughts on that one on Second Thought on Sports Show on the Mental Conditioning Podcast.